Hi, I'm Renee. I'm the founder of Hashtags as well as HER Entrepreneur. So what we do at Hashtags is to uplift businesses in brand transformation and marketing advisory and implementation online and offline. We also do curate programs and build communities for our clients. And we also do have a community of entrepreneurs, government, investors, and corporate leaders across Asia, whom we connect regularly and during this period, of course, virtually. Right, so HER Entrepreneur is the other brand that I own. It is an omni-channel media platform where we inspire, educate, empower, and also connect the ecosystem of businesses together. And through education, through networking, through business matching as well. So that's a little bit about me, my background. I used to be in a totally different line, right? Prior to this, it was in B2B media. So we dealt with various industries across Asia, bringing the ecosystem together, the buyers and the sellers together, covering several industries. And before that, I was in stem cell research. So totally different line. And now I am an entrepreneur. Yeah, so to you, Pachari. Yeah.
Thank you for that introduction. You did fade out just a little bit, but on to Rob now. And I see Mario is online with everything complete. Excellent, thank you. So Rob, take it away.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'm Robert Mckinsey. I'm the Deputy School Director at Vattel Hotel and Tourism Business School in Thailand. We are a network of 55 schools around the world. It was first established in 1981 in France, and the network has really grown considerably outside of Europe, really in the last 10 years, with the growth of the hospitality industry around the world. My original background is that I worked in media and communications in the UK. I worked in advertising and for a media owner. And then, probably like many people, I came traveling around the world and ended up in Thailand in 2003 and started my career in education. And I've been working with Silpakorn University, which is a big local Thai government university, since 2005. And we established a partnership with Vattel in 2003. So the program had been running a couple of years before I started. And then in 2012, I fully moved over to work on the Vattel School. But of course, it's still in partnership with Silpakorn University. And yeah, we've got a big school. We have around 300 students. We have what we call a double degree program. So the students get one degree from Silpakorn University and also a degree from Thailand. And very unique really to the program. I think really why the program's been very successful is that it's very hands-on. So we rotate every 2 weeks between practical training at the school in real life environments in the restaurant and cafe. And also then the students do 2 weeks of academic management courses. And then also they do 2 internships throughout their studies in hotels or hospitality organizations. So we like to think that this gives the students a competitive advantage for when they graduate, that they're very sought after by industry because they've been given the right kind of skills during their studies to succeed upon graduation.
Thank you, Rob. So on to Mario, our friend who's dialing in from Myanmar.
Hi, my name is Mario. I'm the co-founder of WeDo, an organization focused on leadership development with the goal of creating a world where half of leaders in all sectors are women. We run a mentorship program across Asia, and we have built over the years a mentors community all over the world. And we run also the Women Leadership Academy in partnership with the US Embassy to ASEAN. And basically over the years, we have developed a mixture of online and in-person training and mentorship that we're seeing is really contributing to the uprise of women all across Asia. I'm very excited to be part of this conversation, which is precisely about how we can help women do better in these challenging times.
Thank you so much for making the time to join us. And I hope the internet and the electricity keeps up the good work on your end. Yes. Okay. So now I want to track back to Renee to have her talk about what was her experience, whether it's herself or with her team or even amongst her friends. By the way, for those of you who may not have caught it, Renee is based out of Singapore. So we have Renee based out of Singapore, Robert based out of Thailand, and then Mario, who I think you located to Myanmar not that long ago, right? So they're all in different locations. So I think the insight on what was happening on the grounds of these other markets will also give you, interesting information as well. So Renee, you started telling me about some personal experience and your goals for her entrepreneur and how was that, came about, and also the impact that you saw in 2020.
Right. So I just wanted to share a little bit about my experience. As you know, I came from the corporate experience, and then I moved on to become an entrepreneur. And when I began, I was conducting training programs. And there was a particular course called Steps to Starting a New Business. And it's meant for anyone who's interested in entrepreneurship. And to our surprise, this is open up to all. At that time, we did not have HR entrepreneur yet, right? And we realized that the majority of the attendees were women. And we thought, okay, so that's great. And after conducting the course, I chat up with them and I asked, so are you ready for business now? Are you feeling more confident now that you're equipped with some knowledge? And many would then say things like, probably I'll pass the notes on to my son or my husband, and I'll support them from behind. Yeah. So I said, oh, why do you do that? Why not do it yourself? And we realized that there's a lot of the lack of self-esteem and self-limiting beliefs that, many of these women would think that they're not good enough to run a business. And I reflected back and thought to myself as an entrepreneur, also, it is a very lonely process because we do not have a lot of entrepreneurs in our circle. Being in Singapore, the common understanding is you go study well and then get a good job, have a stable job and income, raise a family, that's it, right? And you're happy, you're married, and your parents are happy. So, but then, I took the route which is less taken. And it's not just talking about women entrepreneurs, just entrepreneurs as a whole. I don't have many, none of my peers were entrepreneurs at that time. So then I thought, okay, I just have to try things on my own. And, at that time, I don't have a network or community. And then I realized there is a gap. And I thought I should address it. I just had a very strong feeling. Why don't we address it, right? Come together and have some of the more successful women entrepreneurs. And then I thought, who are they? And then suddenly there's this, moment where you think, okay, there are very few female entrepreneurs who are out in media. They're not being featured, hardly being, invited to speak even in an SME event, which is typically quite male dominated, because I was in the B2B mines industry and I covered several industry sectors, from mining to supply chain to, logistics, hedge funds, private banking and all that. And you realize that they're mostly male speakers or male attendees compared to female. So same for entrepreneurship. So I thought, okay, why not create a community, a safe space where the budding entrepreneurs or current entrepreneurs could learn from one another, find opportunities to grow. But HR Entrepreneur was then created not to be only female focused. It is an inclusive and diverse community of people, men and women alike, people from various industries and different levels of entrepreneurship, right? To come together to learn, to network, and to grow beyond just within the community, but to grow outside or even outside of the region. So HR Entrepreneur was created, 2017 was when we had our first conference where nobody heard about us. So I was I was the only believer because nobody heard about such a thing, right? So I created the program, I did sponsorship, marketing, the website, and everything else, and getting the speakers together. That was the first year. It was tough. But after that, people start to bond together. They see synergy. They start mingling with each other, and they realize, I didn't know. I heard of this brand, but I didn't know it's a woman behind this brand. And it's great to hear from you. And it's the only place where you see diversity, and you see a good mix of male and female speakers, right? A good balance compared to most SME events out there. So that's how, the brand was created. Yeah. Hope that answers your question.
Yes, I'm also supporting Renee on her entrepreneur chapter in Thailand as well. And so I help to propose speakers and join when there's no big schedule conflicts so that I can participate. And so I would encourage everyone to also join as well. There's many people coming now from Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand. Are you open? And Vietnam, that was the other chapter, because I see there's Han Lee, but I'm not sure if you're Han Lee, if you're based in Thailand or in Vietnam, but it sounds like you could be Vietnamese. So, all right. I want to touch on something that Rob and I have been speaking about, because Rob is coming from, previously in communication and then to hospitality education. And the hospitality, F&B has been, travel has been taking a big hit as a result of COVID. And one of the stats, the reason for this webinar and how it came about was because there was a stats in a McKinsey report about the massive loss of job for women. So I want Rob to discuss that a little bit.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for inviting me, because although I'm an educator and obviously a large proportion of our students are females, in fact, we have about 64% of females as our students that were recruited last year. So you can see the connection in general with the hospitality industry. And I think that the global average from the United Nations World Tourism Organization is 54%. Yeah, and that statistic that was thrown up in the McKinsey report was also 54% of job losses for females, which is quite shocking. It actually reminded me of another statistic I saw, being an educator, a statistic I saw a couple of months ago. I think it was from the US, and it was something like, of all the total job losses in the US, there were 156,000 of them in December, and all of them were women. And I was like, how can that be? That's amazing. That's just unbelievably, well, one, bad, and secondly, sad. So that kind of really shocked me at the time as well. And I thought, if that's happening in the US, and obviously a lot of those jobs will be related to hospitality and tourism, what else is going on in the world? I think we've seen here in Thailand that Reuters said the other day that there was estimated 1 million job losses in tourism last year here in Thailand, and they're predicting another 1 million in this first quarter. Again, if we're taking the global average there of around 54%, that's a huge amount of females that are currently out of work. So obviously this is something that needs addressing. There's kind of hope on the horizon, which I'll talk about a little bit in a few minutes. But I think if we kind of talk about, in general, the hospitality industry, most of these jobs will have been lost at the kind of lower entry level, maybe those in operations such as housekeeping and food and beverage service and kitchen. But I think what we're starting to see as a school is really a kind of change in perception of the hospitality industry and the kind of roles and positions that females are now adopting and going into. So the big hotel groups are certainly recognizing this, and if they want more diverse boardrooms to encourage leaders in the hospitality industry. You know, if they want to attract more talent and more creativity, then of course women are going to play a huge role in that. So I think the big hotel groups are starting to recognize that and encourage. I know Castle Group did a report a couple of years ago in the US to reflect this as well. So I think generally within the industry, it's not perfect, it's not great, but there are certainly more opportunities being provided for women within the hospitality industry to grow and develop and go into managerial positions and hopefully boardroom positions as well. So yeah, we've kind of sort of changed our curriculum in the last year to reflect this. We're seeing a lot more females, students that would like to be chefs, for example, that maybe a few years ago would have been more considered as a traditional male role. We're seeing a lot more that, as Renee was just talking about, want to be entrepreneurs and certainly creating their own businesses, whether that's small boutique resorts or cafes and restaurants. And we've had a lot of successful alumni that have gone on to do this as well. So we're very much developing and focusing our curriculum to meet these needs, you know, to provide more kind of soft skills and sort of people skills that we were talking earlier. I mentioned that we have our own application restaurant and cafe on the campus and the internships that we have. So these soft skills are really those sort of areas that students need to develop in real life environments and situations and on the job. So that's the kind of areas that we're focusing on, as well as the business management theory for maybe creating their own businesses in the future as well. Is that kind of for the first part? Yes? Okay, good.
Yes. Rob, is it your first webinar as a panelist?
Sorry, could you say that again?
Is this your first webinar as a panelist?
I've done a couple before, but with Vattel Group, education-wise, yeah. Mm-hmm. First time on gender. So I'm not, okay. I guess what I was trying to say at the beginning is that I'm not maybe an expert on gender equality like my other two fellow speakers, but working in education, of course, we're all about equality and giving the right opportunities for males and females, yeah.
I think because we have been collaborating together in the last 2 months, I think what the conversations we've been having, though maybe you're not working directly in that, you know, gender equality yet, but I really like a lot of things that you've said about, you know, helping the students getting transferable skills. And then now people are having to rethink and about themselves, whether it's to reskill, upskill, using transferable skills. You know, what are your transferable skills, which is something that I'll ask a little bit later, because some people, they don't know if they've always been in the same job for a really long time before COVID hit them. I know because I've been doing some recruitment for some contract work, and I'm seeing people in, you know, in their 40s, and I can see they've had a long history of having worked for somewhere. And yeah, so I think about those things, and you know, before we get to the meeting, to see how they could adapt some of their skills to the role that I'm recruiting for. So Mario, I think you had an interesting experience, and I really like what you talked about when COVID hit, and then you needed to, as an organization, you guys needed to start reflecting on who you are, what we do, and how you can be relevant to the women in your group that comes through the We Do program. Could you touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, COVID has been a very challenging disaster, really, that happened for We Do. And both for We Do as an organization and for the community of women that We Do supports. And in the very early months, like March, April, May, we had to make some difficult choice as an organization. And, you know, as we were doing scenario planning and whatnot, together with some of our funders, there was somebody was bringing up the option of we should just stop doing anything. And, you know, go in hibernation, I think was the name of that scenario. And to me that felt somewhat wrong, and I reached out to the people in our community, people we serve, and I said, okay, so these things could go really bad or mildly bad. What do you want? How can we help you through these? And consistently, both the mentor and the mentees in our program, so more experienced women and men, and on the mentor side, and the mentees are all women, so on the younger side, all women, they were saying, just do whatever you can to continue. So this is precisely the moment when we need you the most. So in those early days, we also went back to our funders and said, this is no time to withdraw or to let things drop. This is the time to be even more present for our communities. At the end of this, people will remember those that withdrew or that run away or that took the easy choice, and those that did whatever they could to stay. And so we were able to convince also the funders of in-person programs to move everything online. And we did, I think, a fantastic work. The team did a fantastic work in repurposing all our tool, our knowledge into something that is as engaging as online can be. But I think it was absolutely the right thing to keep pushing rather than hold on to whatever reserves we had, because what we found out is that in the past few months, I mean, COVID is not over yet, right? Lots of people have to redefine themselves. I think we all walked into 2020 with plans, resolutions, or whatever that was, and then when the COVID hit, all of that went up in the air. Many women had to lose their job. We monitor employment for women in our community. We know that for many, income went down to zero. Quite a significant percentage, unfortunately. And now, pleasantly though, happy ending, income is starting to come back, so signs of recovery there. But in those moments, you may find that you lose your job, you go back home, you have to take care of the kids if you have kids, or you need to find another job, or you need to figuring out a sort of income. One of the biggest hidden problems that we have seen very early days has been the mental frustration, and so how the mental issue was becoming pressing. And there's a mental health taboo in most parts of the world, especially in Asia. It's really hard for a young 20-something girl in ASEAN or in South Asia to go and say, hey, I'm depressed. Hey, this is heavy on me. Hey, I can't do it. And so what we found is that just being present as a community, continuing the mentorship program, so that special relationship between really two human beings, has helped a lot on reducing the losses, if you want, on the mental health side, containing the problem a little bit there. And I think that has been the best thing that we could have done. I'm glad we were able to be present there. We actually seen that there's been sustained applications for the program, so people did not get distracted by other things. There's women that even during COVID may have lost their job, or may have significant loss of income. Some of them at least were still applying in our usual numbers to our leadership program, which for me is the most important thing. We wouldn't want this year to be a loss year. It is a year we need to adapt to. Things have changed, problems are real. We cannot just ignore them and say, hey, just focus and everything is going to be all right. No, stuff is real. But what I've seen is that our community has not given up their objective. They've transformed their objective to adapt them to the circumstances. And this is very much what I will very strongly recommend to other women that are still facing hopefully the last part of the COVID crisis. I think a last dimension that I want to highlight, not to be just a positive entrepreneur looking at the bright side of things, but it is true that whilst many sectors have been very severely hit, tourism being one, hospitality in general, travel as well, there have been some other sectors that have been flourishing. I mean, it's now anybody can create an online panel without needing to have budget for flights or venues and whatnot. And if you have something to give to the world, there's a chance that the world may want to listen to it. Technology has made monetization of those new skill set more and more feasible. And so I think that a retraining in this period, or at least an exploration of alternative path can really translate not only in a buffer of reducing losses in the short term, but perhaps even in the beginning of something new and hopefully very exciting. But this is not to say that, oh, it's all on you, you gotta fight through this fire and you're going to emerge victorious. I understand this is a hard time and just resting is enough. But for those who may want to do that extra push, I think that there are possibilities, even during COVID time. And so building that resilience, that confidence that Renee was talking about become really critical in those months.
Thank you. That was a nice handover to Renee as well in regards to how do women build resilience. So now I'm going to open it to Q&A, and of course those who've joined us today, feel free to type in the chat any questions that you may have to the speakers, and I'm monitoring the chat and I can share the questions to them as well. So Renee, on to you about the challenges that women face at work, at home, different age groups. How do they, what are the women in Her Entrepreneur did to be resilient? Can you share a bit about that?
Right. Okay. Thanks, Pachari. So building resilience will also mean that you have to stay relevant to the market. So in terms of education, reskilling yourself, and be abreast of issues around us, right? We have to look at things in not just a micro perspective, but also in a macro perspective as well. There is a lot of scope for women to raise their economic contribution and role in their region. And with the proliferation of digital and automation technologies that can change the nature of work. And this will impact women, right, in Asia. So reskilling is really important, learning what's current and how you can potentially adapt and be relevant, and think about your role, right? The things that you study maybe 5-10 years ago may not be relevant today. The jobs that you took up some time ago may not be relevant today. And then in the next 2, 5, 10 years, what are you going to do, right? So coming together with a community to learn from one another and to build potential partnerships, that would be important as well. So there are a lot of things that women can do to build resilience also, if we can support one another, not just through education, but because of the multiple roles that we have to play also, as a mother, as a wife, as a colleague, as a business owner, or as a corporate leader, and many others, right? Because of the many roles that you have to play, and in Asia, as you know, that women are expected to sort of execute certain roles. They're expected, right? It's the expectation from maybe the family members, even the elderly, that exert some pressure on the women. So we have to constantly thrive and find ways to do well. I think communication is very important with the important stakeholders in our zone. So it can be, our elderly, our husbands, right? Our family members, our children, how we can communicate that, this is me time, this is work time, and housework, or home activities, family fun time would be a different time, right? You have to segregate that, be very clear on how you schedule things, just to, ensure that you have that space to meet your sort of goals, right? And to achieve that. And you have to communicate that. If not, the expectation is always there. You have to communicate why you're doing this, explain the why, right? Once you're able to convince and negotiate with the important stakeholders, we usually do that with our, clients, right? Why can't we also do that at home, right? And if they understand better, I think people would, sort of support you as well. So I think all of these play a huge role. The whole ecosystem, it revolves around more than just, the ecosystem of businesses. but also, the people around you. Yeah.
Do you think, and this could be to Renee or Rob or Mario, because of where we are, do you think the nature of work will change? Because you were talking about like work from home, the partners have to be more flexible in their role, right? Of taking on different responsibility, not just putting only the housework on the woman. But in the future, do you think this is going to change faster because of what happened? Rob and Mario, you're welcome to talk, or if the audience has some points wants to throw in, you're welcome to also answer this as well for your opinion.
Yeah, I think it will definitely change. I mean, the guys are more open-minded now, right? And you start to, not want to live with the elderly, right? And you live separately, right? And they're more understanding. The newer generation of couples, they're quite different, right? So it depends on the upbringing. It's also, depends on the culture. But I think it will change. Yeah. So the guys could chip in.
Mario was very, when I approached him at the start of this, to say, Sally is initiating this project. And Mario was very like, you got to build a panel that's balanced, So how about you? Because I think Mario is in an interesting position because he's a co-founder of an organization, but he's also trailed his spouse. So if you could, share your take on this.
I mean, I don't know if generations are changing. I see among my friends, my peers, some that are like my granddad, and some that are way more advanced than I am. I try to do a little bit in the house, and I realized something very important lately, which is was actually thanks to a comic that somebody shared with me, one of those memes that goes around online, is that, it comes that the thing that the man washes dishes one time per after dinner, and on Saturday he goes to all his friends, yes, I helped at home, I'm such a good husband and whatnot. Like the house burden, the childcare burden goes well beyond those little tasks and actually includes the managerial burden of the house. And so that little comic was saying, there was this husband that was helping, but every time he wasn't doing something, he said, oh, why did you not ask me? Because the wife is supposed to think about everything, and then when you delegate a task, yeah, sure. I suspect that is becoming the new positivist attitude. It really doesn't solve the problem of gender parity, because still has kind of the assumption that the burden, at least the managerial burden, is on the mother's side, and then the executive burden could be given to the man, that now he's a nice man just because he's doing half of his duty. So I like to look at this as a step forward in a more constructive direction. But I can tell you, I've seen in my very own family what happened when COVID struck and women had to go back and think about the kids. And now there's an extra tenant in the house that expects way more to be done, as if there were secretaries and everything else around. And the husband, of course, I'm talking about. So I feel like there's this new trend of working from home has lots of potential, but it really needs to be coupled with a form of education of men. This is not about working from home. This should be a different structure of society where we've removed commute, we've removed the physical distance between husband, wife, and perhaps the kids for as much as a school from education from home is going to continue, which is another big trend that will continue after COVID. And so it's the whole structure of the household that I think needs to be reviewed. There's one point that I also think a lot. I mean, WIDO works on leadership development, so a lot of the women that are in our community are educated or on their path towards education, and we help them through the training. We also have a pool of funding for education and whatnot. the reality is that of the 3.8 billion women on the planet, the overwhelming majority is not working in a condition that will allow to work from home. We're talking about garment factory workers, hospitality industry, farmers, where all these, well, the brutality of COVID and has hit on them only for the negative side, where sometimes the husband or they themselves may have lost jobs or lower income, and now, yes, the childcare burden if the kids were going to school. So I wonder, what can we do as a society to try to take some of the benefit, the potential benefit of this technology that enables the working from home, and of these new logics of structuring work and household, and really trying to make it count for the overwhelming majority of women in the world. Do you understand that there is a risk that whatever is happening now is just going to increase the gap from the working woman in a capital city and the rice farmer somewhere in the rural areas of most of our countries, not Singapore. There's no rural part in Singapore, but most of the other countries,
right. Because they don't have access, right? Access to computers.
But it's also the nature of the job.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of value chains. The tourism value chain is how do you need a way. Somebody needs to bring that cappuccino. You're never going to be able to digitize that. Even if there are some very interesting robot delivery systems that are being developed in some parts of the world, that experience that, Rob, you're working on is always going to be an in-person experience, right? So what can we do in those sectors, I think, is going to have a disproportionate impact on the welfare of women in general. And I don't know, I guess, Rob, this is your job to figure out.
I had an interesting, just to share with you, to give you part of that answer, which came up during the lunch at the Canadian ambassador. Her name is the Ambassador Sarah. And one of the ladies who were part of the WeCan, which is Women Entrepreneur Canadian Chamber, so the short name is WeCan. So she's farming crickets, and the crickets that she's farming is for proteins. And so the work that she's developing, obviously, is outside, is in the fields. But one thing she said that happened during COVID that she had to adopt to was put in place IoT into the farming, because people wanted to go home. The commute was much harder because, like even you said, in Myanmar, like some of the bus routes started to close down and they couldn't travel, this, that, and the other, right? So similarly, fewer buses were busing in the workers to her place where she farms the crickets. So they said, okay, how can we do this on a reduced workman hours? So they made a conscious decision strategy to implement IoT, to monitor the temperature of the farm, to make sure the food was automatically given to the crickets, things like that. So I think the smart farming system is going to eventually move out, because not everybody wants to do farming in the traditional way, because it's laborious, right? Time consuming, it's super hard work. So I think with more integration of that, then we could have more technology. But you're right, but internet is not everywhere. We think it is everywhere because we live in a big city, but it's still not everywhere. And I think Google had this project, like where they would do something like they called it the moonshot, where they would have like a balloon with the internet floating around. I don't know where that project is today, but it's another possibility.
Perhaps just one consideration about technological disruption, especially with the push towards automation and robotization that came those days of COVID, is that the moment when there is some automation breakthrough in the farming industry or the garment industry, we might see like millions of women losing their job. That these are not technologies that improve work conditions. These are technologies that replace human labor. And so I think I understand that with the garment industry, there are some limitation of what automation can do. And so we still need the hands of humans to do certain parts of the work process. The moment where robots can do that, we are going to need to retrain tens of millions of women in the garment industry, which is the second, I understand correctly, garment is the second largest employer of women after farming in the world. And rice is also a crop that is less prone to automation compared to other crops. And so we see that there's still a role for humans to be played there. And so I hope that the leaders in those spaces will try to find a balance between efficiency, economic and technological development, and really trying to manage the backlash of that in a also having a gender perspective. I'm always a little bit torn and say, what does it mean? Should we not bring robots in factories so that women can keep producing garment? Of course, that's not what I'm trying to say. But what's the solution? If the solution is a bad job or a robot taking your job, these are just two problems. How are we going to figure out the structure of work that will remove all the bad jobs, leverage automation, but still leave sources of livelihood for tens of millions, mostly women in those sectors? I'm very excited to see it. It's going to be in our generation.
Yes. Yeah, because I'm sure before you left Thailand, Mario, you heard the Thai government talking about Thailand 4.0 and digital transformation. And you had mentioned memes, right? So there was a meme that came up during this time. I see Katerina smiling too. Maybe you came across the same meme. It's like, oh, digital transformation, what instigated? COVID. So immediately I had to digitally transform, because I have to make sure my employees can still work from home. So and talking about that, because yeah, you're right, there's got to be that balance, right, between how much do we automate. Some things can't be fully automated, and eventually maybe a lot of things can be automated, like Star Wars, Star Trek kind of deal. I want to go to Rob and touch on that, because I think the role of education is paramount in this. And many people talk about how, and that's also, there's another gap, right? Because you mentioned earlier, Mario, that the gap between, you know, the haves and the have-nots, and then there's that gap of the educated and the uneducated. So what is the role of education? And then for those who have already been educated to, you know, look at their current skills, how are they transferable? That's my question to you.
Thank you. Well, just to talk about automation and so on, we have started to see it in the hospitality industry as well with robot hotels. But fortunately at the moment, it's just a novelty idea. But I think replacing that human interaction is very difficult to do at the moment. And, you know, if we learn anything from what's been going on with COVID and maybe this idea about transferring skills and so on, I think it's woken up the hospitality industry. You know, we've had to rethink and almost kind of come up with new innovative products. You know, if we talk about the luxury industry, for example, and learn from them about this whole idea about experiences and authenticity, which I think you know, should be passed on down into other sectors of the industry as well. Certainly that cultural experience. So yeah, what we do in education really is that I mentioned earlier about the soft skills side, but we're very much focusing now on transferable skills and how do students make themselves more marketable. So this is obviously key factor with what's happened with COVID, and a lot of our students and the graduates that completed their studies in July last year, of course, they found it very difficult to find jobs in the hospitality industry, because pretty much all the hotels had stopped recruiting last year. We are starting to see a turnaround now, and hotels and hospitality organizations are starting to hire again. But yeah, we still need to focus on this idea of transferable skills with the students, and quite often, not just students, but also older people as well aren't aware really what transferable skills are, and that they actually have them already, but they just don't know how to put it down on their CVs, how to present themselves better in order to get those important jobs with employers. I think Oxford Economics, they did some nice research at the beginning of the year, and they talked about 4 key trends in the next 10 years that employers are going to be looking for. The obvious one that we always talk about are those communication and interpersonal skills. But also, interestingly, they had down other areas such as digital. We're teaching students very much now about how to work with digital media, how even maybe to do design work. So how can they do adverts on social media, whether it's on Facebook and Instagram, and take photographs. We go into areas even now of food stylists, that they can show off their food even better. And then we've got areas of knowing software. So, not just how to use a computer and Microsoft Office and PowerPoint and Excel, but also software that's used in industries as well. And then they also talked about agile thinking, so more about this idea of innovation and how do we see the big picture, how do we manage opposing views and diversity. And then the last sort of key skill that they're talking about is these global operating skills, so things like foreign languages. So not only do our students study in English, but they also learn French and they also learn Chinese, which are important for the growing hospitality markets in China. And also cultural sensitivity, so being aware of different cultures and working with different cultures. And again, having an understanding of international markets. So these are all kind of, we talk about creative thinking and critical thinking and problem solving and all these other areas as well. And it's really sort of breaking down all of those skills and thinking about, what have you done, maybe as students or even in your job, what sort of tasks have you performed, what presentations have you maybe made, who have you done them to, what projects have you worked on. And when you start breaking all of these things down, you start to realize and understand that you have a lot of skills that are probably very transferable into other industries as well. I'll give you a little example that we just had a lady approach us who has been working in the hospitality industry for the last 10 years, and she's been working mainly in guest relations, and she's lost her job. She was working for one of the big hotel groups, and unfortunately she was laid off. They're not renewing her contract. And she sat down and thought about, what skills do I have? I can't get a job at the moment in the hospitality industry. So she thought about education. And she's got a master's degree. Fortunately, she's developed herself. She just didn't sit back on her bachelor degree. She also completed her master's degree, which qualifies her to be a teacher. And she approached us about a job here at the university. And when we looked at her skills that she had, obviously the operational side was very good, the experience is very good, but she also possesses a lot of those skills that we're looking for as a teacher to transfer across into this role. So I think it's that case of always being open-minded, thinking about the skills that you have got. COVID has shown us that we might need to think about a career change, and how can we develop those skills, as Mario said, about upgrading your skills, doing extra training to be able to transfer in the future more easily.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think it's great to know about transferable skills and how you can parlay into a different role. One thing that we touched on, I think, in our preliminary discussion, Rob, Renee, and Mario, was about, which I think Mario kind of talked a little bit about, that is like the mental health. It's been a taboo thing I think, to come and say, okay, I've lost my identity, right? Because so many A-type personalities, maybe they've always been on their go, 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 and then all of a sudden they lost their job. And as a result of losing that job, there's a huge chunk of their identity is also lost. So I wanted to put this back out to Renee, and then later a little bit on Mario, because I think we touched on this, like when, before we can get to the re-education or the retraining of skill, and stuff, is the reinvention of yourself in your mind. How do you reinvent yourself here? Overcome those things that, or even the old suit that you used to wear when you went to the office, and rethink yourself in a different way. Renee,
it's a really tough question. Yeah, it's a really tough question because just to share my experience as I transited, right, from a corporate role, and then I took a break. It was not a tough decision because I always wanted to leave. It's just that the company gave you good incentives so that you stayed. And I stayed for close to about 5 years. And towards the end, I quitted, right? 3 weeks before the wedding because I didn't have time to plan. It will send you wherever and you got to go, right? And then it's just like that. You don't have time, right? So it was really tough because you take on a high management role and you have a lot of responsibilities, not just your own KPI, but your team's KPI, your colleagues' KPI. You become responsible for so many other people. So you're babysitting, training everyone, making sure everything is okay. And then your life is at the, it's like not a priority, right? But it can't be the case as I think about it, right? You can't have that sort of, as you transit to your next phase of life, you get married and you have to settle down, right? I don't think you want a case wherein you start quarreling with your partner because you don't chip in, right? So you have to be constantly aware that you have to contribute in all of the areas in which your stakeholders, your important stakeholders are. And that becomes so difficult. And from that time, the transition from living that corporate role where you, at least, you held a leadership role, people look up to you, people go to you because you're the decision maker. And then suddenly you take this break, and it's odd because I never had that proper break. It is a bit odd, right? But luckily it was the wedding, and then we had our, trip to Europe. We had that break. And then later on another trip to Maldives. So it was a good break. And then I asked myself, so what's next? Is it back to corporate role or are you going to do something different? Are you going to start a business or what? So I started from scratch, from nothing, right? No network, because it's a totally different space. And I thought, okay, let's go into training development because I've always been, training the entire office team in terms of sales. And a little bit of marketing. So what can I do, right? So I started from there, and I felt really odd as well because it's now from there to right at the bottom. And I was telling myself, I don't want to be a housewife. I'm just not cut out to be a housewife only and don't contribute back to the economy. I just can't. So it's just so difficult. So you have that cognitive dissonance while you're at work because you feel like you can, you want to do more for everybody. And then when you're at that, you feel that, okay, is this good enough, right? How can I do more? Like you said, A-type people, right? They cannot sit still. So they feel that they are so far away from where they were. So this gap, right? You're trying to chase to be there. And that is really tough. So surround yourself with like-minded people. Surround yourself with people who are like you, who have experienced what you have experienced, and have that conversation. And you realize that it's not only you. There are people who are suffering even more. There are people who have to go through even more because of the things that they have to go through, the industry that they're in. We're in service line, so there's some advantages to it. So there are some friends who are in F&B line, retail, and they're really hard hit during COVID, right? And when manpower is an issue, they have to be the ones doing the cooking. The bosses are the ones doing the cooking. And then you can imagine how about yourself if you were the one doing it, right? So always surround yourself with the right people, have that conversation, that open conversation, and such, platform would be good, right? See how you can improve yourself, constantly improve and get there. You always think that, someone else's, job is always better than yours. You always think that the grass is greener on the other side until you are on the other side. And do you want to come back? You want to go somewhere else, right? Constantly grow and be better at what you do, better than just continuously do better than yesterday, right? And never think that there'll always be that perfect time, because that perfect time will never come. Just like the stars will never be aligned at the same time, traffic lights will not turn green at the same time. You miss that time, that's it, it won't come back. So you want to do it, you do it now. You want to upskill, reskill, do it now, right? Think about tomorrow, think about the future as well, right? As you leave your life, at this moment, you just enjoy while you can, but at the same time, be conscious that you have to be relevant tomorrow. Yeah.
And what makes you what's the driver for you, Renee? Because you say to be relevant, to reflect on yourself, is this the direction you want to go? Like when you do that internal dialogue with yourself, what's the driver for you?
Interesting one.
Yeah, what makes you like, hey, I gotta think about that. Not everybody has this self-reflection sometimes.
I turn certain challenges that I think they are challenges to drivers. So, for example, people would say or give an excuse that, oh, I have kids, so I can't do this, that, right? I have a family to take care of, so I can't do this and that. So the self-limiting beliefs, get that out of the way, turn the challenges into drivers. So to me, my family and the kids become the driver, because if I don't get there, then they're going to suffer, right? And then if I don't spend that time with all the important stakeholders in my life, be it, work, at home, then something is lacking, right? Things can't move well. So everything must be balanced. But I kind of turn all these challenges to something that, will motivate me to do better. And as you think, you want to be that role model to your kids, to the next generation. You don't want to show that you'll give up easily. You want to show that you keep pushing yourself until you can make it, right? So that becomes a driver to me. It motivates me to say that I want to do something, right? And the people, and the thing is, once you start, you can't stop. That's why I say never hesitate. When you hesitate to do something, you have not started. But once you start on working on something, you can't stop, because people are watching. You can't just give up, right? People are watching. You have a team. And sometimes on a bad day, you feel like, oh no, it's a bad day. What am I going to do, right? I got so much rejections, blah, blah, blah. And then you decided, okay, I don't want to do anything. And then because you had a team, because you have that team, your teammates start to come to you, hey, by the way, you have appointment. They're chasing you instead. Instead of you chasing them, they're chasing you, right? So that things move because you train them as such. And then you realize that, okay, without them, maybe things won't move because you're kind of demotivated already, right? So always start doing what you decide to do. Once you make that first step, always move forward. It's difficult to move backwards because people are really watching you. You have to be that role model. Yeah, so I think these are the drivers also to be better. And because you start mixing with like-minded people who are much better, and you see, oh, these are the strategies, right? How can I apply them at work? How can I do better? I know it takes time. Sometimes you see a success story, you read the papers, you say, wow, fantastic. How can I be like that? And you think like it was just a snap of fingers, not like that, right? So we have to nurture ourselves, nurture the people around us, and then up to a stage wherein sometimes even though you're not like highly motivated, the people around you actually motivates you. It's a very strange thing. Yeah.
So you've got this like loop, kind of like, so it's kind of helping to perpetuate itself. So I'm glad you brought that up and shared your personal story. I did what you said, which is like try to find the people who did it before you, right? So that you can start to mix in the right community. Sometime I found the right one, sometime I didn't, which then helped me discover coaches. And this is, I don't have life coaches that I go to, but I have like a business coach for one. I have another communications coach that helps more on like, teaches me how NLP works, CBT work, RTT, just so I understand the different tools that they work with. And then now I want to shift this over to Mario, because I think what they do in terms of like mentoring young ladies. I grew up in the US and knowing that it was okay to get help outside. But I know in Asia, sometime when you reach out outside to get help or try to develop something, in a different community, there's sometimes backlash, right? Like, oh, why are you going to hang out with those people? Or why do you need that mentor? So I want to put this towards Mario, like when you see young ladies struggling with that because they're in the process of reinventing themselves, what do you do? And also, how do you pair the mentors and the mentees? And how do you set up a system so that, it's fail-proof in some sense?
You're right, it's hard. I find it harder in this part of the world to look for mentors. I was shocked when we started WeDo to discover that, for instance, in Khmer, there's no word for mentor. We need to use mentor, or we need to go through long explanation of the difference between a mentor, a teacher, or a trainer, or a boss, and all of these other, is that minus this, or is this plus something else? Mentoring is a little bit of a special thing. And quite frankly, I didn't grow up with myself. I discovered it late in life, and I found, oh my God, if only I had mentors, even just, that uncle that gives you advice. It doesn't have to be a formal structured thing. Many years ago, how things might be different today. And so at the beginning, it was really hard to explain the concept of mentoring to begin with, let alone run the program. But then the best thing has been, while you run, then people talk to each other. And so the women in our program and the mentors as well were sharing with others the effect of mentorship. So we had less to explain what it is and more showing what the result of it is. And so we have seen over time that mentoring is the highest demanded service that we offer. Originally, we thought it was going to be funding for education. So poor people need money to go to school, like simple thing. We found out instead that mentorship is way more sought after. The way that we run the program is really trying to, so understanding one important thing, that the chemistry inside a mentoring relationship is very critical. And so I've been part myself as a mentor of many mentoring programs that match you with somebody, and that's it. Now you have a year, go do something. And that assumes that you are perfect at matching, which nobody is, we're not, and nobody else is either. And that the magic of our relationship will just naturally happens over time. What we have found is that two critical aspects is one, the chemistry. We can do as much learning and analysis around it in the pair. We don't know what are the secret of a good match. So what we can do is just change the dynamic inside a match and explain to everybody, hey, this may work or this may not work. If it doesn't work, it's not a problem. It doesn't make you a bad mentor or her a bad mentee. It's just as those two pieces don't work out. And we've made very explicit that the concept of a rematch is not the symbol of a failure and something that we need to remedy. That we've done something, we've tried making a cake, it didn't work the first time, we just do it again until it works. And that removes the concept of failure, the concept of offense, perhaps from the partnership, where maybe the mentee thinks this is really not the right person for me, but I don't want to say it, it's going to look bad on us. Just remove that, all that shame. And so I don't think that we are fail-proof in each individual match, but I think we have much higher success rate with each individual mentee, precisely because we embrace that rematch, even rematch after 1 week, 2 weeks, or after many years, is going to be part of the process. There's another aspect around mentoring, which I think is very important, is the point of giving it a purpose and managing it a little bit. Like other programs I've seen, I mentioned they're matching, and now you go out and do great stuff. See you in a year. We realize, actually, our research shows that the quality of the relationship significantly changes around month 3 or 4 of an average relationship. So whilst it's important to identify the relationship that are not going to work as early as possible, it's also important for those that might work to let them get to month 3 or month 4, because that's just the time for building trust. And so we provide some extra stimulation, perhaps the support in the early months of our relationship, to see, for those that believe that the relationship has some potential, to get to month 3 or 4. And after that is where the magic really happens. And I feel like some people mix a little bit mentoring with sponsorship, and so they reach out to somebody from whom they want something very explicit, like help me get a job, or help me with something that is very narrow. And they mix that with somebody who you may want to help you nurture your long-term development. I think these are two different relationships. If you mix them, you're going to be too demanding on time from somebody who can give you something but not time. And you're not going to look for the people instead that are willing to put the time to really nurture your growth. So we focus for now only on the mentorship side, not on the small technical, perhaps more sponsorship or advisory oriented purposes, although we are finding that there is a lot of demand for that too. So we've been thinking about always making sure that it's a very clear-cut distinction within mentorship and other kind of services, but try to add a little bit more of that, connecting with employer HR professionals that may give you that tactical one-off connection for a job and whatnot. And I think that this clarity, the support of the relationship, is trying to understand the different evolution of each relationship is what, again, it's not making it each relationship foolproof, but making the system having a higher success rate than others.
Great. I like that you said that, because I have different coaches for different things. One is more on the psychology of things, and the other, he tends to be a little bit, because he's an entrepreneur, he's owned like 4 or 5 different businesses, and I'm an entrepreneur. So in each of the relationships I have with them, they're so different, because the other one that I have with a coach who's a former entrepreneur, who's now doing a lot more training in the area of leadership, the way he talks to me is, it's almost like, go out there and get them. He's very, different style altogether. And this is how, and he gives me different ways on how to think about my business based on his previous experience and books and stuff, that his knowledge. And the other coach talks about, psychologically, how you can approach things, when you're planning a communications campaign. So very, very different. So it's true. You can't get everything from one person. It's too taxing. Even your life partner, you can't get everything from them. I discovered, you still need all those other relationships in your life. So it's 11:17, And I just wanted to open out to anybody else. 11:17 Bangkok time, Renee. I know you're mindful because we're in a different time zone. What time is it, Myanmar, Mario? I don't recall. Are you guys 1 hour before us or after?
We do the 30 minutes before thing.
30 minutes. Wow. Okay. So I just wanted to put it out there in case anybody else has got questions or comments about anything that we raised here. Katerina, Hanli, Kon Warapron. You can type as well if you don't want to speak. No? Oh, very quiet. Okay, so was there any last words, Renee or Rob or Mario, that you guys want to share before we end the session about the economic cost on women's career and what's next?
Maybe if I can just add something that I didn't mention earlier, but we were talking about transferable skills, and I think also people don't use the kind of the social media tools that are available well enough to kind of market themselves better as well. So we make sure that all our students, for example, have a LinkedIn profile, even if it's a basic one to start with, but we try and teach them how to kind of present themselves better with a nice photo and a nice description. If they think of that kind of elevator pitch idea of selling themselves, if you was to describe yourself in a few seconds, what would you say about yourself to sell yourself? Yeah, and using the other kind of services that LinkedIn provides for job hunting, looking for jobs, connecting with people, growing your network. We even say to our students, it's still important because they're looking for internships. They often don't think that it's necessary for them while they're still students, but it really is. And I've noticed in the last year how they're using the different functions like open to work to make themselves available to employers on LinkedIn. And also, you know, sometimes we recommend they use, not always, but sometimes to use the premium services as well, although I think that's more relevant for people that are looking for jobs at the time. And yeah, and then just in general as well, using social media more professionally, making sure that they have a suitable digital footprint. They have to remember that people can see what they post. What do I do whenever anyone applies for a job? I go and check them out on social media. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. So yeah, you look at their Facebook profiles and, you know, on Instagram and Twitter and so on to see what they've been posting. It can reveal a lot about someone. So we always advise the students just to be very careful and to clean up their social media profiles and to start using it more wisely if they aren't doing so already. And that just goes obviously to people, whether they're students, females or males. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in as well, really, at the end.
Thank you, Rob. I think that's really important. I've had some young people come through and doing training here. For example, there was a young man here from another university, and he was really keen on fashion, but the reason why he interned here was eventually he wants to start his own brand of fashion. So, and then I had a quick look at his profile on social media, and I said, you know, you never discuss anything except Netflix shows on your social media. And I said, you know, if I was an employer in the industry of fashion and you say that this is what you really love and want to go towards, you know, how are you adding even to the conversation, or say, let you discover, you know, the way that clothes are designed by, whether it's Michael Kors or that, you know, DK or whichever brands that's out there. And I said, you know, you want to add to that discussion or share some of the new discoveries that you may have had onto your social media to show that you're keen on the industry, not just talking about Netflix shows. So, because he's a young person, right? So all he talks about is like all the different series he's following. So like you said, you go and you look at his profile and maybe he turns up and says, yeah, I really want to be in your fashion brand, but nothing on his social media says that.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that idea of personal branding as well, isn't it? We had an example of a graduate. She graduated about 10 years ago now, and she started working for, I think it was Marriott, in sales, in the marketing department. And after a couple of years, she then went to work in retail. So talking about transferable skills, she moved across and worked for one of the big luxury brands. I think it was Gucci. And then she went to do her master's degree in entrepreneurship, and she really wanted to set up her own fashion business as well. And I think what she does really well now, when I see her on Instagram and Facebook and so on, she very much has this, good sort of personal branding theme going on, where she has this reoccurring theme that she's daydreaming, but when she's daydreaming, she's showing her clothing, and it's very stylish. It looks very good. So she's kind of got that bit of panache, that style. She's presenting herself in a way that, not necessarily that she's knowledgeable and authority in her industry, but she's got that people can connect with her. They can see what her product, what her sort of whole identity of her business is. And I think that works really well. And sometimes we have to, it's not easy to do, but to try and make those connections with maybe personality and our business, and creating that kind of theme that the customers can identify with.
She sounds like a smart young lady. I definitely think you have to start with, daydreaming, and then you can start to put those actions in, to support, to make that dream come to life, right? So Renee, any parting words before we close out the session?
Yeah, as we're discussing about being digital, being savvy, nothing is impossible these days. So, women can now then leverage on digital or online marketplaces to sell. And traditionally, you have to own a shop, and it has a very high upfront cost, right? And now, costs have been so much lowered because of technology. So there's no reason why people cannot be entrepreneurs or even micro entrepreneurs, right? It's just how we do things differently. So we have to constantly learn how to, in terms of the digital tools, right? How can we leverage on those to measure results, to sell, and to know what's selling best and to what markets, and to analyze that deeper and do better, right? Things that we can't used to do, now it's possible. So being digitally savvy is important. Yeah.
Yes, it's really accelerated us in that space. It was in the plans for a few years, and in our industry, I think just 2020, I bought 4 more software and had to learn them very quick. Mario, last words before we close out the session?
I hope that COVID has taught us, and all of us that have been in trouble, and also more so women who may have suffered most of the blunt, that 2 very important aspects to go through this moment of crisis and to bring on after the crisis are to nurture your supporting community. Nurture doesn't mean taking from your supporting community, it means taking and giving. So both parts, but also not give up goals and aspirations, transform them perhaps, but no need to step out unless it's really, really needed to step out, which more often is not. So I wish those 2 things to all the one that will watch this video.
We recorded this session, and I will send you guys the files, and then you can also share them for those who I think we had 40-50 registration. I set out the link for those who weren't able to join for whatever reason. They can watch it in even the recording. The team was even telling me to remind me because they're like, because they're doing some other stuff for clients, because they're doing the media calls. They're like, hey, don't forget to record because I want to, you know, check it out later on the way home or something. They'll download it on their phone. So thank you, Renee, Rob, and Mario for coming in today and sharing us your thoughts and insight on this, the impact on women's career and what's next. And I look forward to future collaboration with you guys and wish you a wonderful day. Thank you, all the attendees as well. See you soon. Sawasdee ka.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.